Hello, high levelers. Rio Daniel here, and we are going to be covering automation workflows inside of this video. We're going to have sort of a huge masterclass where we cover everything related to workflows, workflow architecture, and just security, permissions, and everything regarding that particular fact regarding workflows, because workflows are so important. Highlevel has moved everything from the platform on to being able to use workflows to do any kind of automation inside of Highlevel. And if you do not understand this, I'm sorry to say you will not be successful as an agency owner with the Go Highlevel platform. So now that we've kind of got that out of the way, if you have not subscribed to my channel, please click on the subscribe button. I do appreciate your support. It is people like you that really help me build this channel, and I do appreciate you, truly. So let's hop into it. Right now, before we get into the nitty gritty of just dealing with workflows and all the things that you can do with workflows and things like that, what I want to do is show you a little bit about the organizational and just the structure that we see inside of Highlevel. So I'm in a couple of demo accounts here, and I'm going to be kind of communicating back and forth to show you some of the features of the workflows. So right now I'm under my demo account, and over on the left, I'm under automations. Here I get the workflow list. Right now, if you take a look here, you get a lot of these buttons. These are just your standard search. If I'm searching for AI, maybe I forgot the name of a workflow or something like that. If you want to be able to find it, because you can put workflows inside of folders and things like that, so you can have that ability. So that's just a great way to organize things. You can create the folder right up here, but if you can't find it, then it makes it very hard for you to be able to go in and edit it. So this little search feature is pretty nice. They do have some basic filters over here if you want to be able to use them. I haven't necessarily needed them. Just being able to search for something is enough for me. So let's go ahead and take a look here. Creating folders is a great way to organize all of your workflows. So workflows, you can have hundreds of workflows inside of a particular sub-account. If you have them all at the root, it really just becomes a mess. You're going to have to scroll page after page after page if you don't remember what the workflow is called to be able to find stuff. So being able to create folders is very nice and a very easy way of doing organization. Now, some of the things I want to show you about folder creation, notice that there's a difference. We have this one AI bot workflows, which again is just a folder, but we also have automation workflows. Now notice that this icon is different. Notice that this has a little lock on there. When I hover over it, it says agency admin. If I hover over this one, I don't see that. So this is something that I want to introduce to you as an organizational level is the ability to put security on these folders. Now, you might be asking yourself, why would I need to put security? Why would I need to be able to have security on folders and lock them down? It's a very interesting question. The reason you want to be able to do that is to be able to hide your intellectual property. So let me kind of help you understand. Sometimes if you have automation set up for client, these automations can be, as we're going to see, can be quite complex. You can even hire people. I mean, some of these things, if you're doing bots and things like that, these workflows can get very large, very complex. The one thing you don't want to be able to do is have a client, when they have you have a client using your workflows, to be able to take your workflow and maybe send it to somebody else or have somebody else copy your workflow after you spent hours and potentially hundreds of hours building and developing these workflows. And you probably don't want your clients going into the workflows and changing and editing anything, because they could mess it up, and they may go in there and play with it and not understand what they're doing, and then completely blow up and mess up an automation, and now you have a problem because now your team has to go in and fix it. So how do you prevent people from being able to access a workflow or even take a look at it? Is by putting in permissions for that particular folder. So over here to the right, if you take a look, we can click on this and just click on, notice we have the ability just to rename. We can move a folder inside of another folder. We can delete the folder, and we can manage permissions. Now keep in mind, I do want to express this, deleting a folder does not delete the workflows in the folder. Okay, so that's something that I want to make sure you understand. You can delete a folder, and it's not like Windows Explorer or for the Mac, your Finder option where you delete a folder and it deletes everything in that folder. That's not how the workflows option delete here. When you delete the folder, you're just deleting the folder and not deleting the workflows in there. If you have workflows in that folder, they will basically just show up at the root as not being in a folder. So just want to make sure you know that. And if you click on manage permissions, you will see you can get the ability to choose what type of person is allowed to manage and edit these permissions. So you can choose an admin agency, an admin user, an account admin, which again could be the very first user you typically create inside of a sub account is the admin for that particular account. Or if you don't want to have any security at all, you can just choose all. Okay, so if you do this and select all, notice that this icon behind me, if you take a look, this little automation workflows, now you have a regular sort of folder. You don't have anything here, but right now I like to keep this as an agency admin, or at the worst case, an agency user, which means that they're a user at the agency level, but they're not an admin of the agency. So even if you set it up for that, which means you have to be an agency user or higher in order to be able to do this, then you could set up the workflow permissions and you get this nice little lock feature. Now, if you're inside of a sub account and the workflow folder is locked, even an account admin will not be able to access that particular folder and look at the workflows that are inside there, because that right there would be a security problem. So if you ever, again, the question that we originally asked is, why would you ever want to implement security and permissions on a particular folder? It's to secure your workflows, to make sure that, number one, your clients or whatever it is don't go in there and mess things up. To, if they're the kind of people that like to go in and play with things behind the scenes, and then they're broke, and then they wonder why automations aren't working correctly, and you go in later and find out that they changed stuff, which, by the way, if they change even one or two small settings, you may never be able to find it, or it may take you hours and hours to find it, and it's very frustrating. So locking them down, locking them out says, hey, this right here folder is locked. Don't bother editing them. If you need to edit these for whatever reason, you need to get the way our contract works is you need to give us a call, and then we will log into your account and we will change the workflows for you. But you do not have permission to do that. So that's a great way to sort of keep people out. And if you do have some of these workflows that are very complicated that you still want to be able to share with your clients, you can share those workflows inside of, say, a snapshot. When you build that particular client sub account, you can use an account which has a snapshot, and that snapshot can be applying all of these workflows and workflow folders into the account. Now, one of the things that's nice is that if you have security on these particular permissions, the security for those permissions do come in from the sub account. From the snapshot. You don't need to reapply them. So if you have security on the original sub account that built the snapshot, then that security is maintained inside of the snapshot. And when deployed, the security permissions are also the same, which is pretty well. So they're saved, and you don't have to go back and reapply them. So you don't need to deal with that on an onboarding process whenever you create the accounts. So again, these are just some of the things to think about whenever you're building these things. So one of the things I do want to hop in and show you here. Before we do that, if you click on workflows, you see that we can select using a recipe and then start from scratch. So I am going to show you what the differences between these are, but if we take a look here and let's just dive deeper into this particular folder, notice inside of here, we have just 3 workflows, but we're inside of the AI bot workflows. Well, if I wanted to, I can create another folder in here and just call it test. So right now you do have the ability to create folders inside of folders to keep it organized even more. And when folders first came out, you're only allowed to create one high-level folder, and now they've updated that so you can create nested folders inside of workflow lists, continuing to organize them even further, which is really great. Now I don't need this, so I'm going to go ahead and delete this particular folder, remove it. But right now, these are the three workflows we currently have configured. What I'd like to do is sit back and just kind of show you over here on the right hand side, when you're clicking on these 3 dots, there are several options that you actually have available. You can edit the workflow, which again, you don't need to click on these to edit it. You can just click on the workflow to open and edit it. You can rename the workflow from this, open in a new tab, publish the workflow if you want to publish it, move it to a different folder, duplicate it, which is a nice feature. If you have a very complicated workflow, and let's just say you don't want to mess with the original one, you want to duplicate it and then make some small changes on the duplication to see if it works. And then if it does, then you can delete the duplicate and then make the changes to the original. That's a great way to test it without having to recreate maybe a huge workflow that you have. So duplicating is great, is really nice. Copy to sub account. This is really good, but keep in mind that this only works if you have admin access. So copy to sub account. If you wanted to, I could take one of these from this account and copy it to another sub account inside of my agency, which is nice. Or I could just simply delete the workflow. So you do have a bunch of options here inside of it. You also see here, just by looking at it, you've got just the name, the status that we're looking at here. It's in draft. Workflows can either be in 2 modes, draft or published. If they're in draft mode, they will not show up on the workflow list. Okay. Now, what do I mean by that? This is very typical and sometimes can be very frustrating. But if you ever come in here, I'm going to just show you. These are all in draft mode. If I were to try to find this conversation AI bot that I created right here, if I go to my contacts, let's just say I select one. Let's just say I want to come here, select it, and then choose automations tab here. So let's just say I want to add this to the automation. Notice that conversation AI does not show up in this list of workflows, because the only workflows in this list are ones that have been published. So you cannot use any workflow that's inside of a draft mode. It has to be published in order for you to use it. So just want to make sure that's clear. Sometimes I have seen people get messed up on that. So right now I'm going to come back in here, and now that we've taken a look at the status, we can see the total enrolled, which means the number of people that have actually gone processed and through this. We can see the ones that are actively enrolled. Now, the ones that are actively enrolled are people that are still maybe somewhere in one step of the workflow. So maybe you might have a wait step somewhere where you're waiting for a reply, waiting for an answer, or just waiting, for a certain amount of time before you continue. Well, those people will show up as actively enrolled in here versus totally enrolled. Total means the people that have gone through. Active means people that are currently in the workflow right now. So you would be able to see that here just from a preliminary review. You'll be able to look at just the last updated and created on stage. So you'll be able to just see those figures, like when was the last time this thing has been updated. Now, if we go through and just take a look at it here, and I know I'm going very slow here, sort of step by step on being able to show you these things, but it's good to understand all of these things when you look at it, because being able, if you're looking at workflows all day dealing with automation, you need to be able to see the information that's in front of you here. And that's what I'm trying to show you. So again, this up here is if you ever have a list of like recent workflows, this right here will show you the ones that are like most recent, like the most recently used. Or me personally, I just like the list view, because in the list view, it just kind of gives you all of them from the folders, and then they're all in alphabetical order. So notice that the folders up here come first, those all show up, and then down here the workflows are A, C, and they're make it easier to find them if they're all alphabetical. So that's one great thing about how you can organize them as well. And now what we're going to do is hop into a workflow themselves here. So this is one that's already been built, and I'm not going to go over right now all the things of this particular workflow, but it looks pretty cool, right? I mean, it looks like you've got all these different choices and things like that in here. What I really want to show you is the structure, the framework here of the workflow and all the other things that you may not be able to see here. So this stats view is pretty nice here. I'm going to show you that a little bit later on, but if you ever send out SMS messages or email messages and you want to find out, how many text messages made it, how many were opened, how many were received, how many emails were sent out, how many emails were opened, those type of things, you can actually look at that directly inside the workflow using the stats view. And I'm going to show you how that works here in just a little bit. But some of the times people focus on the builder so much, they forget some of these other ones that are up here, like some of the settings, the enrollment history, and some of the other tabs. Hey, real quick, guys, if you're looking to start your own software company, then click on my free course in the link below. I'm going to teach you 8 ways that you can start your own software company very easily with no money out of pocket, no experience, and absolutely no tech skills. Check it out, click the link below, and let's get back to the video. That are also very important as well. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the settings. Now, typically when you're doing this, allow re-entry, I think, is a default value, but you need to make sure that if people are going to be using this workflow over and over again, like the same contact, if you want to be able to use it over and over again, you need to choose allow re-entry. If you don't have that selected, if this thing is turned off like this, then once somebody goes through the workflow the first time, they are not allowed to go back through it again. So this is a great way to help you build workflows that are sort of a one-time processing. Maybe when you onboard a new client or you do something that's just the first time only, you want to make sure that this thing is done, but the client can't be processed or sent through here again, then you can turn that allow re-entry off. Right now, it's a pretty good idea. Most workflows are meant to be reused over and over again for contacts, even if it's the same contact going through again, the workflow, that you allow them to go through. So that's one option here. I'm going to blow this up a little bit. So another one is stop on response. Now, I don't really utilize these. I kind of handle this inside the workflow, but there are possibilities where inside of this particular workflow, if you have different messages going out and reaching people, and that person, the contact who you're trying to reach, responds in any way to a message. It could be, Facebook Messenger. Maybe they reply back to the message request. Maybe they reply back with an SMS or something like that. Then you can say, if this is selected, you can have them stop going through the workflow, meaning the execution of this workflow, whatever's remaining that they haven't been through, will just stop and they will exit from the workflow. So that's something that you need to consider as well. If you ever need to do this, just being able to utilize these cool features. Now, the communication for the time zone, you can choose, do you want the time zone of the workflow to be the account time zone, meaning where the agency is or the sub-account, or the client time zone? So this is very important. It depends upon how you want the workflow to work. This is going to be completely up to you, but the default is the account time zone. So it executes in whatever time zone the agency or the sub-account is in. So time window. This right here is very nice, because if you ever send out nurture campaigns, or if you ever want to do sort of real-time communication, but let's just say you only want to operate during the business hours and you don't want to send out text messages like at 10 o'clock at night or emails at 10 o'clock at night, even though that may be the part of the workflow that is when it's scheduled to go out, you're like, no, I don't want to do that. I only want this workflow to operate and to send out messages during a specific day and time period. If you want to do that, you can simply put down your restrictions, your start time, end time, and what days of the week that you want this workflow to be able to operate in. So that may be very good if you're ever under any restrictions, or if you just want to be professional And you just, again, you don't want people to get text messages or voicemail drops at 1 o'clock in the morning, depending upon how you have your workflow set up. You may drop it during that time frame, depending upon when they entered the workflow and how you have all of your wait settings set up. So just be careful of that. You can specify this if you want to. This right here is going to be very important, the sender detail information. Right now, if you ever send out emails, again, we're going to take a look at this a little bit later on, but this is the preferred method for building an email nurture campaign. You're going to have one big workflow that's going to sit back and go and just keep sending out email after email after email, and you can continue to update this. But one of the things when you send out an email, you have to have a from name and a from email address inside of that email action before that action will actually send. Now, rather than updating this in every single email action that you put in there, because keep in mind, you can be sending out emails in a workflow 10 times, 50 times. You could be sending out hundreds of emails in a workflow. You don't want to sit back and have to edit these on every one of those actions. So rather than editing them at the action level, you can simply just put in the details here. And typically, if you want to, this is where you can use your custom value. Maybe you're using your account name here. And the account name is just your location name. So whatever your business or your sub account name is what it will use. And then email, if you wanted to click on this and just use it like your account email, whatever the email is at the account level. Or you can use a user email. If the user is assigned to it, maybe you can sit back and just instead of account, you just choose user and then the user email. So it looks like it's coming from the company. So it would be like in this kind of case, this ABC marketing agency could be the sender's name, but the email address would be John at ABC Marketing, whatever the user account that's associated with this contact. So that right there is one. Now here, this is an interesting one, conversations. So right now, mark as read. If you're ever dealing with workflows, and specifically you're dealing with workflows that deal with client communication, SMS, emails, things like that, one of the things you're going to find is that having people reply to all of those can really start adding and building a lot of information inside of your conversations area. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but if people are expected to respond a certain way, what you don't want to have happen is you don't want to get responses from users that you expect and have workflows set up to handle them, and then also get all these conversational messages popping up in the conversations area of your sub account, because then you have to go, sort of click on them and then mark them as read. So right now, if you don't want to have that happen, you can just simply say any conversation to happen in this workflow that interact with the customer, just mark them as read. And what that means is they won't pop up in the conversations area inside of Highlevel as, if you're communicating, because sometimes that can be a real pain. So I just want to show you, these are some of the things that you can set up initially, depending upon how your workflow is going to be set up. These are some important settings that sometimes people just leave as default. And there are some powerful things in here that if you know what to look for and know what to set, can really save you time, energy, and effort as you build out your campaigns. So another thing up in here is enrollment history. This is really good because if you ever want to see if somebody went through a workflow, or if they went through all the steps of a workflow, you can sit back and look at this and see the person that went through. You can actually look at it and then dive into the actual component of this. And we're going to look at this again in detail a little bit later as we build some workflows live and do some communication so we can see how this works. But here we already see that we do have we have been seeing some history here from this one. And if we take a look, this right here is just the high level showing like the contact, the date that it was enrolled, the action, what the status is, are they finished, are they still active? And then the next execution, if there is a next execution, when will that execution be on? So if you wanted to, you can just simply click on this and dive deeper into there. And if you want to, you can go ahead and click on this. So that right there will open this up and just show you some of the conversations that happen here in between them. But right now, if you wanted to, you can actually click on this icon right here on the side. It looks like a little clock. But if you click on this, you can actually view its execution history. Forgive me. Now, what this means is that inside of the workflow, on each step that happens inside of the workflow, as your contact goes through it, it will actually sit back and have, what happened. So here we see in the very beginning, just to kind of give you an idea, and this is really good for troubleshooting. Like if people go through the workflow and it doesn't respond the way you wanted to, you can sit back and look at the execution logs here to see what happened and see, did they skip a step? And if so, why did they skip? So, and I'm going to show you this a couple times throughout this video, because this is very important if you're dealing with workflow, being able to have a diagnostic tool to be able to track down these problems. So here we see that this is when the person was added to the workflow. Notice the status. Added, it went to waiting, then it went to executed, then it went to finished. Now, these steps are going to change based upon how you have your workflow set up. So right now, if we take a look here, it went in to the workflow and waited. Now, if we wanted to, we can click on this little clipboard item right here to actually get details. And what it does is pops up with this nice thing saying who it is, added to workflow, added from trigger. So this was a trigger, customer replied, website chat widget. So it lets us know how this person became active into the workflow and when it was executed. So this right here is a really good, again, diagnostic tool to figure out what happened. Now here again, you can look at all the detailed steps of this. And I'm going to show you in another workflow that I already sort of ran, and we're going to kind of build on it, how you could troubleshoot and how this has become very helpful for you. So the enrollment history shows you just the people that went through, where the execution logs are more detailed. They're like, okay, not only did somebody go through, but I'm going to show you every single setting of every step that they went through. So again, with the builder, we triggered, we went to this, from here we went to the next step, and so forth. So the workflow execution history will represent that, or we'll show you that. Now, one of the other things inside, if we take a look at these workflows, is this nice little icon right here. So we look that it's been updated here, but as you might figure out, workflows may change from time to time. So the workflow that you originally built may not be the one that you end up with, because you may be adding, removing items to it and changing it throughout the life of that particular workflow. Well, being able to click on this, and right now I don't want to save any of this stuff, so it's just saying you're going to move away from this. But if we take a look at this over on this left-hand side, I'm going to try to blow this up. But notice right here, this is the version history of this workflow. So I'm trying to scroll down here, but I think I might have. But this right here is like, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6. These are all different changes that have happened to this particular workflow. And if you ever wanted to, you can click on the workflow and see, okay, at this time, what did this workflow look like? So notice that this workflow is, this is probably when I was building it. Then in version 6, I added this conversation AI piece here. And then in number 7. So you can see every time you save, you get a new version history. And the nice thing about that is that you get to see all of these versions and what happened beforehand. So if you ever need to roll back or figure out the difference between what an older version of the workflow had that a new version didn't, you can look at this and actually see all of that in this particular workflow history. So that's really good to have that feature. But again, a lot of people don't, when they have these workflow videos and automation videos discovering Highlevel, they just talk about the actions and the triggers and things like that we're going to learn on what happens, these things inside the workflow, not all the other stuff that happens that's possible with the workflow to be able to troubleshoot it and help you figure a problem out once you have it. So again, just looking at this particular workflow, trying to see if I can blow this up, but up here at the top, we've obviously got just a save button. This is where you would publish it from draft to published. And then if you wanted to, you can actually click on the test workflow, to actually sit back and test it. And then if you wanted to select a contact, any of the contacts that you have would work for that. So that's one way of being able to test a workflow. Another way of testing a workflow is, in order to make it work, again, it has to be published. So right now, that kind of leads us back to the next thing is let's go and take a look at a live workflow. So right now, I'm going to take a look here, and we've got this automation masterclass that we're going to be taking a look at here. So inside of this is going to be pretty straightforward and pretty easy. I'm going to just show you all the components now of what happens inside of a workflow. Before, we've been looking at the workflows, folders, permissions, security, everything about the items inside the workflow that actually make it happen and make the automations work. So now that we've got all the other stuff sort of handled, one of the things I want to show you here, just before we get started in this, is show you the execution logs. So here, I created this as just a simple SMS and email workflow, and I tested it on myself, tested it on one of my other accounts that I had. And right now, let me see here. Yeah, let me move that one. So right now, if we take a look, I'm going to show you the stats view. So now on this, if I turn on stats view, notice here on the SMS, again, I only ran this once. So again, this is just letting you know, but when you turn on the stats view over here, you get these particular boxes that popped up. Now, I want you to be very clear. It says workflow is not editable in the stats view. So when you have the stats view on, it's a way of looking at different what performed what, and from deliverable, clicked, and failed inside of Highlevel, but you can't edit the workflow. So you'd have to turn the stats view off if you want to go back and edit it and change stuff again. But this is pretty cool if you want to sit back and just look at your current stats inside of this. So right now, you see the SMS, 100% were delivered. There was just one. Nobody clicked on it. There was nothing in there to be clicked. But let's just say if you did have a link or something in there, you'll be able to determine who clicked on what inside of it and then what percentage failed. So that's good to know. Now, the email delivered, none of these stats are actually showing up. Why? Why didn't the email show 100% delivery and a certain open rate and things like that? Well, let's take a look here. So if we take a look at the enrollment history, we'll see, this is one that I just recently ran here, and it finished, so it got all the way through. And if we want to, we can click on this to view the execution history. And if we want to sit back here and look at, what happened here? Let me blow these steps up in here so I can show you. Looking at the status, you can see they added to the workflow, the SMS executed. Oh, what happened here? Why was the email skipped Because this is very common, guys. This is very common of just, why somebody didn't get an email in a workflow. And you're like, okay, well, this person looks like it was skipped. Let me come over here and click on the detail option to see on that. Oh, so now if we take a look, we see the skip was due to D&D is on the email. So for this particular contact, there's a do not disturb enabled. Like somebody must have clicked unsubscribed on an email or something like that, or even opt out or stop or something on a text message. That happens in your contacts. So this is the reason why the email did not get sent out here. So one way to fix that is to come back in your contacts area. Simply search for, we're going to scroll all the way down here and notice under the do not disturb, the email is selected. So we're going to remove that from this particular contact because we don't want that to happen anymore. So right now what we want to do is, this is another way to test a workflow. If you want to test it, to build a user, and I'm going to select one, click on the campaign option here. And then I'm going to sit back and click on this and choose that particular automation masterclass, which is the workflow we were just in. Now, here's some of the other things that you can do when you're adding workflows. You can sort of execute this all at once. So you might have 2 users, 20 users, 50, 500 users selected in your contacts, and you want to send all of them through a workflow. Do you want to, here, if we take a look, do you want to add them all at once? Do you want to add them at a scheduled time? Or do you want to add them in drip mode? So those are a couple different things that you can have, and you can kind of work and figure that out. Those aren't difficult, but we do have to give the action a name, and I'm just going to call it enter. And then we're going to click on add to automation. Now, this automation is going to kick off. It's going to go through and run the automation, and it's going to sit back, if I believe it's under here. So if we take a look now and we go back through enrollment history, we will see here, let me take a quick look. See what happened there? This is a great example here. And honestly, I didn't mean to do that, but the allow re-entry is not selected. So that means that I was not able to execute me through this workflow again because I've already been through it once. So if we take a look here, I purposely enrolled and sent myself through here, but I don't see a second execution happening right now. So now I have to come through and say allow re-entry and then save. And now once you allow re-entry, now that allows you to sit back and send the same person through the workflow again. So that's a unexpected type of error that I had there. But we'll just go ahead and do this again. We'll do the automation masterclass, and just this action can be whatever you want to call it, add to automation. Now, when we do that, now the workflow should allow my user to go through it again. So if we come in here to this particular workflow and take a look at it, we should be able to see enrollment history. We should see a second one now that just went through. And if we come back here and we take a look at the execution logs, we should now see that this last one that we had, not only did, I'm going to try to blow this up, not only did the SMS execute, but the send email function executed, which is great. Because keep in mind, the email execution was skipped over here, and notice that this was skipped here, the add to workflow action. This, even in the execution logs, it didn't show up in one part, but if you take a look here, you will see for the details, contact is already a part of this workflow and cannot be added again. So again, for troubleshooting, this is very good to sit back and look at what happened and why I was not allowed to go back through it again. But the biggest thing here is just to take a look is that I was able to send another email out using this particular function because I removed the D&D function from my user account. So now if I come back here and look at the stats view, now what we do is we've got 100% delivery on the SMS. That still hasn't changed, but now we get 100% open delivery on this particular feature here. So right now that right there, and then if you want to, you can start measuring the open rate, the click rate inside of here, the replied, bounced, all of these statistics, which is really nice to have at just a glance. You can see what emails went through and which emails failed. So right now, one of the biggest things that people have is, let's just say you're sending out an email. Now, some emails could be flagged as spam depending upon the subject line or even the content inside of the body. Well, if you take a look at, you'll get these stats on every email that is sent out. So maybe the first email is delivered at 100%, but you might start seeing delivery of this next one be like 90% or 80 or something lower. Well, you might want to take a look to see if there's maybe some spam related, like special characters or something in the subject line that could prevent that email from being delivered, because some people, it might get flagged in the spam filter as spam. That's a really good way to take a look at it, because then you can start seeing all the emails that are not making it, or maybe ones that maybe need to be rewritten to avoid a spam filter. So again, this is a really great tool to sit back and use. So now that we can kind of see the execution logs and all the background stuff, let's take a look at some of the heart pieces of a workflow. So workflows really consist of two main components: the trigger, which is what starts or causes the workflow to execute, and the action items. Now, I want to sit back and specify. This right here, notice that it says add new trigger. There is no trigger to this workflow, yet we were still able to use it. So what that tells us is having a trigger is not necessary in order to use a workflow. Why is that? Well, because you can manually execute a workflow like we just did. I selected a user, I went to campaigns inside of the contact record, I chose the workflow, and I click send. You may want to do that. That may be the way that your team sends out workflows or enrolls people inside of a workflow, and you don't necessarily have a trigger. So that's one way. Another way is inside of one workflow, you can actually have an action item, which I will show you, to enroll that person or to call another workflow from within an existing workflow. So let's just say you have workflow one. And inside of workflow one, you might get to a certain stage where you're like, okay, now I want to add this person to workflow two. So now you can add an action item that says add this person to workflow two, in which case now that workflow will automatically be called the same way we did inside of the contact record, except it will be done automatically through the workflow. So hopefully I didn't blow your mind on that one here, but let's start taking a look at these items and start getting a little bit more detailed into what you can do. So here, if you look at the triggers, again, trigger is something that causes the workflow to start or causes the automation. Now, there are some pretty typical things that happen in here, and you're going to see Highlevel gives you a ton of different triggers. I mean, this video would be half a day if I sat back and looked at every one of these and explained them. But just if you think about it, what are some common triggers? Try to sit back and blow this area up here. What are some common triggers? And let me move over here. Think about it. What are some common triggers that you might have automations work from? So let's just say if somebody submitted a form on a website, you might want the automation to start and move forward. Or let's just say if a new contact record is created, maybe somebody goes through a chat widget, and the chat widget creates a new contact record for that particular person. Well, you might want to have something, upon a new contact being created, you might want to have something done. You might want to have an automation run for whatever reason. So these are just some common ways that workflows can be triggered, but let's take a look. So notice in here how these triggers work. There are main areas. So notice we're dealing with the contact area. So dealing with contacts, meaning everything that is inside of this trigger is located or dealing with a contact record. That's what this means. So birthday reminder. So if you ever have a contact that has a birthday, you can actually have a workflow fire off of their birthday coming up if you wanted to. And that's a great way to do birthday reminders. And that is actually a great intro into showing you how, once we're done with this, I'm going to show you a little bit later on how the Highlevel recipes work, which are pretty nice because Highlevel creates a lot of these recipes that will build some of these standard workflows for you and really save you a lot of time. So I'll show you that here a little bit later on in the video. But let's take a look at these triggers. Contact change. So any information inside of a contact change, contact created, contact D&D, that means do not disturb. So if somebody opts out, let's just say they send stop for a text message or they click unsubscribe inside of an email, any one of those will change the contact D&D, and you might want something to happen as a result of that. Maybe you might want to update their contact record. You might want to add a note. You might want to create a task for your team. There's tons of stuff that you can be able to do on here. Really, your imagination is the only limit to the automations that you can do inside of Highlevel because they've given you all the tools to build a huge automation, and it's just really up to you to build your business practices to these workflows to make them happen. So take a look here, note added, task completed, things like that, any of these events. So notice here for inbound webhook. Now I do want to show you this little thing right here. If you look at this is a gold crown. These gold crowns are what they call premium triggers or premium events. And we're going to see these in a couple different places. What this means is if you utilize this inbound webhook, this is classified as a premium trigger. And if it's a premium trigger, that means every time you use it, you will have to pay Highlevel a fee. So it will cost you to use this feature every time you use it. That's what this little gold crown right here means. So some other events that you can deal with is, if somebody emails you, here's a big one. This is one that's used a lot for, if the customer replied right here, or if a form was submitted, or if you're doing surveys. If you send out a survey and somebody submits a survey, here's another trigger that can automate a workflow and do something with it. There's a lot of different things that you can do here. Trigger link clicked. Here's your Facebook and TikTok forms submitted. So if you ever do ads on TikTok or Facebook and somebody fills out those forms and they get submitted, that's a trigger that can cause a workflow to start. These are also some other great ones, video tracking. So this is a great way to sit back, if you have a video on your page and somebody watches, say, 10%, 20%, 50% of the video, you can configure whatever that is. That once they watch that percentage of the video, then the execution of the workflow fires. So that's pretty good too. Appointment status. If somebody booked an appointment, change the status from confirmed or canceled, things like that. That's where you can sit back and have a trigger for that. And then notice we have opportunities. This is really your pipeline area. So if you ever change the status of a pipeline from one stage to another, triggers can happen. There's a ton of stuff in here, guys, for this. Affiliate. So inside of Highlevel, it gives you the ability to have affiliates sell your products inside of Highlevel. So if you're selling a digital course or you're selling other things, you have landing pages built for these particular products and you have affiliates, well, you can have an automatic form that signs people up as an affiliate. So you can have this affiliate created, or if the affiliate makes a new sale, what happens? These are all good things. So if you deal with affiliates, you have triggers for those as well. Courses. You also have unlimited courses inside of Highlevel. So right now there are all these different things from, if you start a different category, if you start a lesson, complete a lesson, if you have a person newly signed up, if you give somebody access to a course, all these are triggers that you can have happen inside of Highlevel, and it's just up to you to sit back and determine what trigger is going to be best for you. Payments, if you send out an invoice, if you receive a payment, all these things are here. This is a really nice one, documents and contracts. That's a relatively new feature inside of the Highlevel platform, to be able to have these documents and contracts sent out. So that's another trigger that you can have if you're Shopify, which I don't deal with Shopify, to be upfront. So these are some of the things that if you connect your Shopify store here, some of the things that you can do. And then your IVR. IVR, if you think about it, that's just the new workflow phone system that Highlevel is configured, allowing you to have like an autoresponder and, press 1 for this, press 2 for that kind of thing inside of the Lead Connector phone system. So I'm going to show you a recipe that you can use for that. That's really good, by the way. Now, here's some of the new things that have been added. These Facebook events, Instagram events, these things right here. So if somebody comments on a Facebook post or comments on an Instagram post, that you can have those posts automatic, have the workflow trigger fire and automatically reply back to somebody on a comment. This is very good because if you think about it, if you ever inside of Facebook or Instagram, you're like, hey guys, I'm going to sell you this, give me my free course, just comment below, Highlevel or money or something like that. So you can have like a keyword that you're looking for and then look for that keyword and respond back to them automatically based upon the comment. So that's a really cool feature that was just recently added. There is a community feature that's inside of Highlevel that allows you to build communities. If somebody joins a particular community or that access is revoked, if somebody's removed from a group, these could be triggers to do certain things too, depending upon what you want to do, and even certificates issued. So these certificates are a cool way that you could reward people inside of communities for like a job well done, or if they're taking a course and they finish a certain amount of material in your course, you might give them a certificate to just make them feel better. And the certificate issued, that right there could be a workflow trigger that gets triggered as well. So there are tons of things that you can do here. Again, one of the biggest things that you're going to find right here that personally I use a lot of is this customer replied. So if you choose, and I'm going to blow this back down, customer replied, some of the cool things that you can do is apply filters to them. So here, if we take a look at some of these filters, we can sit back and look at, like, one of the nice ones is this reply channel. So if we do reply channel, so if we take a look here, these are all the channels that Highlevel can communicate with and reply back to customers on, from call, chat widget, email, Facebook, Google My Business Messenger, Instagram. All these are cool features. So you're like saying, if somebody, I'm going to have this trigger that says if somebody sends me a Facebook Messenger request on my Facebook page, then boom, I'm going to have this workflow trigger and I'm going to go do something. So again, you can kind of understand what kind of triggers you can have. And again, you can have multiple workflows with multiple triggers, but please be careful. I have seen people end up in what I call automation hell because you configure multiple workflows with the same reply channel and the same type, which means you've got multiple workflows that are potentially being executed at the same time. And that causes a problem. So again, if you have one workflow replying to people, for instance, on Facebook Messenger, you should have one workflow handle that and not two workflows, because two workflows are going to execute both at the same time whenever that event happens, but they could have similar actions and make you look foolish because now you've got two workflows communicating with that contact maybe at the same time. So just be careful about that. Again, that's called automation hell when you get to that particular point. So this is why it's just very clear to make sure that when you have triggers, that each workflow has one particular trigger. Now, you can have multiple triggers. So let's talk about that. So I'm going to save this. Now I'm going to sit back and look. This is one trigger. And notice that when I do this, the trigger, if we take a look here, this is important for just good workflow etiquette, is to name the steps inside of the workflow. You see here, trigger customer replied. That doesn't really tell me much. It doesn't really tell me what type of reply channel it was, just like this SMS message and this email doesn't really tell me what the SMS message is for or what it does. So here, a good etiquette would be to click on this, and here inside of customer replied, you might have like Facebook Messenger. So when you save that, now you're looking at it. Oh, okay, so this is a customer replied to Facebook Messenger. Now I can understand what that trigger is for. And then likewise with SMS, you might have SMS number 1. So this could be your first SMS in an email sequence, but at least it's something better than just SMS, because if you're looking at it, you can kind of tell what it is. Or, it could be, SMS, get email address. So maybe you're sending somebody an SMS to get their email address or something like that. And whatever it is, this is a little bit more, if you take a look at it, more informative than just SMS. So now that we've kind of covered that, these are all things that you eventually end up learning if you're building a workflow and you ever go back in and edit it. Otherwise, you're looking at every step in the workflow to kind of see what it does again. So you don't want to do that. You want to save your time and make sure you label them correctly. You also want to add another one. So let's just say if we want to do another customer replied, we want to add the same kind of filter, but we want to have a different channel. Let's just say this reply channel that we want to do here is Instagram. So again, we want to come back here and label this. And again, whenever we do this, we want to make sure we come back here and load this out, save this workflow. So now if we take a look here, now that we see we've got two triggers, customer replied, and then for Facebook and customer replied for Instagram. So if anybody ever replies or sends us a Facebook Messenger request on our Facebook business page or sends us an Instagram DM connected with that account, that whatever is in the integrations for this sub account, then this workflow will fire and send off some other actions that we see here. So hopefully, we're able to track so far. Again, triggers, you don't have to have a trigger for a workflow, but triggers, you can have one, you can have multiple triggers if you want to. Inside of here, you can get crazy for it. As a matter of fact, if we take a look at, let's just see, I think, is it this one? No, one of these, if we look at this, has, like this right here, this one has Instagram, Google My Business Messaging, Facebook, and SMS. So here's a workflow that gets triggered off any of these reply channels. And when we see this, we've got multiple different trigger points. Any one of these, again, could trigger this workflow. This does not mean all of them. So this is another thing to understand about workflows. If you have multiple triggers, any one of these triggers independently activated can cause this workflow to function. You don't have to have all of them happen before they start. So this isn't like an and operation. When you have multiple triggers, it's like an or operation. So you're going to have to get familiar with that. And I'm going to show you some of the stuff about and ors when we're dealing with sort of if logic. And we could take a look at it in this particular workflow here. But notice we have multiple triggers. Here we've got a task. Now, one of the things I haven't had you look at yet here, and probably because I'm just so familiar with workflows that I kind of overlook it, is we've talked about triggers. Let's talk about let's look at some of the action items that can happen inside of a workflow once this happens. And then once we look at that, we'll take a look at this workflow and examine it a little bit further. So we'll go ahead and click on this. Action items are what happen under the trigger. So this is sort of the meat of the workflow. These are the things that you want to do and have the workflow execute as part of the automation process. So if we take a look here, notice that we've got a header for contact. We can create contacts, find, update contacts. We can do all of these things inside here. And I'm going to try to blow this up some just so that we can see them better. So any of these features you can do inside of the workflow. And really, this is where experimenting and kind of applying your business logic to what you want to do in the workflow is what's going to cause you to sit back and add one of these or not. So again, look here, you may never, for instance, add a task to, if you don't deal with tasks and you don't want to use Highlevel as like a task management, then you may never use the add task action in here if you don't want to. Okay. So again, one of the things I want to show you, this copy contact, notice that this is what they call a premium action. Now, premium actions are offered for, you can use them inside of a workflow, but they cost to use them. So we looked at triggers, how there are sort of premium triggers. There are also premium action items. So if we take a look here, just see if there's any others. No, this copy contact is really great for this one, by the way, here. This is a great new one that they added. So if you ever needed to move a contact record from one sub account to another sub account, you can do that with this and really nice and cool. So I use this a lot. If you guys ever do cold email outreach, I have a whole other video on my channel dealing with cold email outreach. And when you do that, typically the best practice is to have a different sub account do all the outreaching and all the email stuff so that if that domain ever gets blacklisted, you don't have to worry about it. But once you finally get a person inside of that sub account to commit to purchasing something, then part of that final video is copying that contact from the sort of prospecting sub account into your primary sub account, and then it becomes a customer. So that's pretty cool too, that you can do that. Now, next is going to be communications. I use this a lot. This is one of the primary things that I use it for, are these things in communication. So you can send emails, send SMS. You can deal with Slack. Now, notice that Slack is a premium, so be careful. If you wanted to, you can actually have the workflow call a team member or connect a team member. Those are pretty cool. If you want to do a voicemail drop, If you ever heard of those, where it doesn't actually, it rings, but then it goes directly to voicemail, and then you could drop a voicemail directly into their voicemail system. This is a good way to prospect if you ever done that before. So you leave a voicemail, and you don't really actually talk to somebody. It's almost like you called, and then you can have a pre-recorded voicemail message play. It is pretty cool. So again, Messenger, Instagram, all these things that you can configure in here. Again, conversation AI is a big one here. So this is kind of what we were looking at earlier in that conversation AI bot, how to actually build it like an AI bot system. And if you're looking for that, just look at the other video on my channel regarding AI, conversation AI. I go in detail about that in another video. But all of these things are things that you can use inside of your workflow to make your business practice happen and to ultimately get the customer to buy or to follow up with somebody. So again, the WhatsApp integration is here as well. Send data if you need to move, do stuff using a webhook. Now, personally, I don't use Zapier or Make or systems like that with integration with Highlevel, because since they've had their own webhooks, they're inbound webhooks, and this is an outbound webhook. But if they have those already, I don't need to use any of those other systems. Now that you can do inbound webhooks right inside of Highlevel, you had to use those before because Highlevel didn't have the webhook feature. I think maybe a year ago they started using that, maybe a little bit more. But since then, I don't need to have Zapier or Make to connect with other systems if you understand webhooks, because you can use the webhooks either inbound or outbound inside of Highlevel here in these action items to do exactly what you want. So a lot of people think you still do, and that costs you additional money, and it adds more complication. It adds more complication because now you have to send a webhook over to Zapier, wait for that to happen and come back, and it just adds a level of complexity that you may not necessarily need. But notice that these are premium features as well. These internal tools, this if else is going to be huge. This right here, to be able to break decisions down and actually make a logical decision inside of your workflow, this is going to be brilliant. I'm going to show you this. Actually, once we're done, this workflow has an if action or an if else statement in it that I'm going to show you. Waiting, perfectly. Waiting is going to be pretty typical that you're going to use in a workflow, because sometimes you might want to have a wait step that just says, hey, I want to send out an email and then wait a day. Then after I wait a day, send out another email. Then I want to wait 2 days and I want to send out an SMS message. Then wait, maybe 6 hours. It didn't have to be a day, but wait 6 hours and then do a voicemail drop. So any of these things, waits are going to be pretty typical, especially when you're building nurture campaigns, because this is going to have you pause the workflow and continue to wait for that person to respond. So that right there is going to be another one that you actually have. And you see there's a lot of actually more complicated when you start really getting into them, to be able to do splits and go from one section of the workflow over to another, things like that. So if you're ever overseas and you're dealing with like multiple different date time formatters, number formatting, you can change those formats to different numbers and sale prices and things like that. If you're dealing with different languages, you can do that here as well. This add to workflow, remove from workflow. These are some of the things I told you earlier in the video, where if you want to have one workflow call another workflow, you can actually add an add workflow step to it here. And we'll take a look at that, but that's pretty common. It's where you're going to add to a workflow, and then you can drop them inside of another workflow. Maybe the add to workflow, let's just say you've gone through your primary nurture campaign, and now you want to put them on, this is our, maybe an 8-week nurture campaign. Well, they didn't buy or communicate with us in this 8 weeks. So now we're going to send them to just a follow-up campaign that instead of emailing them every day, might email them every week or every month or something like that. And then at the end of your primary workflow, you send them into your follow-up nurture campaign, as an example. So here's just a bunch of different things that you can do. This is if you ever want to build like a chat GPT integration, this right here is a nice way of doing that using OpenAI. This is also a great way of being able to sit back and determine somebody's intent. So this is pretty cool. You can actually, if you get a message back from somebody, you can actually have AI determine if it's sort of a positive or negative intent. And then based upon that, you can use an if else statement to split that, to say, if it's positive, go down this branch. If it's negative, go down this branch. So that's pretty cool that you can have AI actually do that. There is an extra AI Eliza bot. Contact Highlevel for that. There are some additional items if you want to purchase that. That does cost a little bit more to use this Eliza AI inside of Highlevel. But appointments, if you ever want to update an appointment, generate a booking link. All of these are workflow actions. Again, keep in mind this action right here is the high level area that these actions pertain to. So these are appointments, any of the opportunity, so you can actually create an opportunity. So if somebody, for instance, the trigger could be filling out a form. If they fill out a form on your website, then you might want to add that lead into a pipeline and put them into a particular stage. Well, create updated opportunity. This is a great workflow action to do that, to put them into your pipeline. Then, of course, when they go into your pipeline, then you can have another workflow whose trigger is look at this pipeline, and anytime we get a new lead, add them to the nurture campaign. So you see what I mean? There's multiple different ways of connecting and building out your workflows to connect these together. And it really is awesome. It's really just up to your imagination on how you want to integrate all these to accomplish your business goals. Now, if you want to, you can also remove them from an opportunity. Here's some different payments. If you want to send somebody invoices, marketing, if you're doing Google ads, Facebook ads, these are some other actions. Again, going back to affiliates, if you want to add or update any of the affiliate information, these are the action items that you can update here. Courses, if you want to grant access to a course or remove them from a course, you can sit back and do that here. These IVRs, notice right here that these are kind of grayed out. If we take a look here, incoming call trigger should be present to use this action. I'm going to show you a recipe that you should use if you want to use the new phone system IVR. You really should use Highlevel's recipe rather than building it yourself because it's just much easier. But you have to have sort of this incoming call trigger for the IVR before you can actually use any of the action items for that. That's kind of a real special case that they just came out with here a few months ago. Communities, you can also grant access to a community. Maybe they fill out a form on your website, and then from that form you say, okay, well now I'm going to add you to my online community. You can grant them group access into that community, and then once you do that, you can send them an email showing them how to log in, and their credentials will automatically be emailed to them. So you can do all this kind of cool stuff here. And again, we talked about certificates. These are things that you can issue to people once they reach a certain level, and it's just up to you whether or not you want to deal with that or not. But all of these are just the different kinds of action items that you can have inside of a workflow. So Highlevel is constantly adding, as it's getting new features, they're constantly adding more and more of these. So let's just take a look and just show you, really at this point, you kind of understand triggers, the workflows. I know we're getting toward the end of the video here, but you're starting to see you have all the components. It's really just a matter of, white labeling, kind of taking a pad of paper, writing out your business logic, what you want to have happen next, and then transferring that into triggers and action items inside of the workflows. But let's practice and take a look at a few other things that we can do here to show you how this works. So this workflow right here, multiple triggers. Anytime somebody sends an Instagram DM, a Google My Business message, Facebook message, or an SMS message, any one of those will automatically trigger this, and it'll come down here and create a task. This right here will create a task. You can assign the task to somebody, you give it a due date. So that gives somebody a task inside of the Highlevel system to get done. And the user will see that on their dashboard whenever they log in. Now, here's the if-in condition. This is really cool when they came up with this because you can do a lot with this. But what we're doing here is we're saying for this condition, we are using all the triggers as the condition as a way of breaking this if-else up. So if they came across Instagram, we want them to go down the Instagram path, branch of this. If they came back through Google, we want them to go down the Google branch, okay? Because we need to be able to communicate with the contact based upon the contact medium or the channel that they've used to contact us. So if they sent us a Facebook request or Facebook Messenger, we don't have their phone number, for instance, to reply back with SMS. So that wouldn't work. So we can't receive a Facebook Messenger request and then send them an Instagram DM back because we don't know what their Instagram connection is. So this is why we need to sit back and break out what channel they came in on and then reply back to them on that same channel. So here, this is what this looks like. For this, we can sit back and see there's 4 different branches. This is just the name. You can call it whatever you want. I call it Facebook. And what I'm doing here is I'm just showing if I come down here and I see workflow trigger, I can select that. If the workflow trigger is, and notice that you can choose from any of the 4 triggers that are already up here. If it's Facebook message, then go down this branch. Instagram, workflow trigger is Instagram, and so forth. So this is pretty straightforward to set up. All you're doing is adding a different branch here. So I can add another branch, call it whatever I want to, and then come here and select whatever I want from here. But I don't have any other triggers at this particular point. So right now, if I wanted to, I can just simply come down here and say delete branch, remove that particular branch. And using these are very easy and user intuitive. So right now, one of the other things we could do here, notice that we have add conditions and add segments. So this is kind of where the and or logic comes into it. So in order for this branch to work, if we wanted to, we could say workflow trigger is, let's just say Facebook message. And we could say the contact details, we could say, maybe we're looking for a tag or something like that. So their tag includes, maybe we do just this contract signed tag that we have. So what this is saying is that in order for them to go down this branch, the workflow trigger has to be Facebook message, where they came in on, and tags included contract signed. So that person has to have a tag that says contract signed, and if not, it will not go down this branch. Okay? Now we can change this from and to or by just simply clicking here. So we can say if the trigger is Facebook message or the person coming in has a tag that says contract signed, then go down this branch. So, and we can keep adding condition after condition if we wanted to, and then just click the X to remove it. So do you see, doing that kind of stuff is very easy inside of these if conditions. And what it means is it makes it very powerful for you to break up and actually show you what happens inside of a workflow to be able to make logical choices and decisions based upon somebody's actions. So again, for this one, let's just take a look. Here, if we want to, Facebook Messenger, which means we come down here and we actually go and we're adding this action is a Facebook Messenger reply. So this is we're replying to them on Facebook Messenger because they communicated with us on Facebook Messenger. So this right here is just simply, sending them communication back. Once we send them back, we sit back and use a wait step. So now we're waiting. But here, notice that in this wait step, there's a couple different things that you can do. Sometimes you just might want to do a time delay, wait an hour, wait 30 minutes, and then continue. Sometimes this wait step, it's very important to use it when it comes to contact reply. Because sometimes we might want to send a message and then wait for a reply back from them. Like we might want to ask them something. Let's take a look here at this Facebook Messenger request. Thank you for contacting us at whatever your location name. Can you reply with your email address so that we can add you to our VIP list, which includes discounts for our services? So this right here is a message that you might send to them on Facebook, and all you're trying to do is get them to reply with their email address. Why? Because right now, all we have is their Facebook Messenger information, maybe their first name and their last name, but we don't have their phone number, their email address, so that we can follow up and put them in a nurture sequence long term. So this right here would be a good way, as an example, to get their email address, and then you send them that messenger request, and then what you're doing here, if you take a look, you're waiting 30 minutes. So what you're doing is you're waiting for them to reply, and then if they don't reply within 30 minutes, this is going to time out, and then they're going to fall out of the workflow because they just may not be interested. So, and you can make this time out whatever you want, but we're actually waiting. If we take a look here, contact reply, we're waiting for a reply to this messenger email address request that we sent. Now, again, notice the labeling here, messenger email address. So I'm requesting their email address, just as an example. Now, I should have done this on all of them in this example, but I didn't. This is probably a test, an example workflow that I use in another scenario, but you kind of get the point. You should label what these are for so we know, oh, this is a messenger asking for their email address. Then what we can do is come back and update their contact record. So their email, from this point, we're going to say, okay, update the contact record, and we're going to make their email equal to whatever the message body they send back. So take what they send us and put it in the email field. So that could be the next step you do, then messenger phone number. So now that you got messenger, hey, thank you for your email. Can you please send us your phone number to update our records? And again, you're trying to get their contact information so you can communicate with them long term. So here we have wait, and now we're waiting for the phone number. You kind of get the feel for this. So you're building out this automation just to update your contact record. Now, once you do this and you're going to update the phone number, one of the things you can do at this point is you've got their information. They've communicated with you, and they've gone through this particular process, and you've gotten their email address and phone number from Facebook Messenger. So now what you can sit back and do is you click on, blowing this up here, click on this, and we're going to go to add, and we're going to say add to workflow. So right now, once we have their information, we've got their email address and their phone number, now we can add them to a nurture sequence or a follow-up sequence to follow up with them to get them to buy whatever it is that we're looking for because they're obviously interested in our services. So here we can simply click here and choose, we'll just choose this automation masterclass that we looked at before. So now what we've done is we've added them to this workflow. We're going to save the action. And if we take a look here, give me a second. This designer kind of gets messed up, but you see what we can just simply do is add this to the workflow, and we can say add to workflow nurture sequence. So that right there is just an example of how you can build out and use a particular workflow. Now, from this, you can use any of the triggers, any of the action figures the action items that you want to sit back and build this particular workflow. But keep in mind, your imagination is really the limit here. So we can look at other emails, we can look at other workflows and things like that. But let's go ahead and just take a quick look at how you would build out maybe a nurture sequence for this one here. So this is sort of the last thing I want to do is just to give you, if you really just want to create sort of a basic way of creating a nurture sequence, how would you end up doing that? So right now, before we get started here, I told you I was going to show you recipes. Let me come back to that after we do this, build another workflow here. I'm going to actually show you different recipes here. I definitely want to show you that. That is really cool. And here we can just, we can call this new prospect nurture sequence. So right now, it could be anything, but let's just sit back and just say anytime a new contact is created. So anytime we get a new contact in our system, if you notice in some of the filters, we could put it, if they have a tag, and maybe, let me just say, I was just seeing what tags I have in here. Let's just say, new affiliate lead. Let's just say you're doing affiliate stuff and you want to say, hey, we created a new workflow. this person was interested in being an affiliate. So we tagged them when they signed up on their website for the form. We created them a new contact record and added the new affiliate lead. So now we're saying anytime we get, and again, naming, I do have to admit, I'm kind of bad at that. So we want to make sure that we take a look at it here. Contact created with new affiliate tag. From here, what we want to do is we might want to sit back and look at, let's just say we do email. We might want to send an email initially. Now, when we're doing this, I want to show you this because this is the pain that you're going to have if you don't use some of the things I've shown you in here. But I'm going to try to blow this up. The email is going to be, and this could be, we can call it introduction. Here, this could be the very first email, or you can just say email, number 1, introduction. This from name and from email, okay? And it's just saying if the from name or from, if you take a look here, this is what is in the form here. If from name and from email fields are empty, then email will be sent using default values. So you want to make sure that you put a from name and email in here. And if you remember, how can we do that? I'm going to close this out. It's by coming into your settings, which is one of the first things that you should do before you utilize this and publish it. Come here. Do you want to allow people to come in here? Do you want to allow reentry? Yes or no? So one of those. And you want to come down here for this details for the sender. And you want to sit back and say, let me use account name. And then I'm going to set a default value here for account email. So now these are the sending default values that you get when you send out emails. It will use these here, and you don't have to do it every time you build an email action item. So we're going to come back here to Builder. We're going to come back in here and choose an action item. We're going to choose email. We want to send an email. We'll just call it email number 1. We don't need to worry about the from name and from email. The subject, I'm just going to call it test 1. Now, if you want to, you could select this from your, any of your email templates, which again, if you're interested in really understanding templates, there's another video on my YouTube channel that goes over just email building templates and things like that. But just here, I'm just trying to fill something out to make it work. And I'm just going to say test. Down here, you do have the ability to test this email. But if we just save the action, notice that this says email number 1. Then what we want to do is we might want to wait. Okay, so the wait, notice there's a couple different options we can do here. We just want to wait on the time delay and say, let's wait. Let's just say 4 hours. Okay, so we want to wait 4 hours, and then right now we want to sit back and send an SMS message. So this right here, and again, if you're giving them access to a course, maybe you're like, hey, thanks for signing up for the course. Just want to make sure that you should have your username and password to log into the course by now. Were you able to get logged in? Do you have any problems? Something like that. So you're just simply following up with them after 4 hours or whatever it is that you want to do. So right now, again, naming convention. So you might want to just say follow-up login credentials. Now, as you're doing this, you start to see how important this is when you're looking at the workflow. Because now what you end up seeing is you see, okay, anytime I get a new person created with this affiliate tag, I'm going to send them out this email number 1. I'm going to wait. And again, if you wanted to, this right here could be, I should have done this as well here. Say wait 4 hours. And that way I know what's happening without looking at it. I'm just going to wait 4 hours. Okay. Then I'm going to send them an SMS follow-up login credentials. And you can just sort of follow this without having to look at every item and every action item inside of this workflow to see if it's set up right. So hopefully you get that. And let's just say here we're going to wait again. Once we wait, this right here might be 1 day. So we're waiting just another day. After this, we're going to click on this and send an email. Now, keep in mind, you don't have to fill out this from name and from email because that's already filled out inside of this workflow by the settings option. So you see the time that you're saving from this. Otherwise, you have to fill this out for every time that you want to use it inside of the workflow. And if, heaven forbid, if you have, let's just say, 10 emails that you're sending out in this workflow and you ever want to change the from name or the from email and you didn't use the settings tab to set that default, you'll have to go to every email setting and manually change it. Or you can simply go to your settings tab, go to the default, which we did, and you can just simply change it there. And then all 10 emails pick that new information up. So that's how powerful getting this workflow set up right the first time is, because it saves you a lot of trouble in the long run. So here we're just going to do, test 2. And I'm just going to fill something in just so I can do with this. And of course, I didn't name it here. So I might say email number 2 and so forth. But here's how you can slowly build out a nurture sequence of somebody going through this. What do you want to have happen? What email do you want to send here? What do you want to send? And then if you want to, you can start adding other items in here. So you might send an email, and then you might come here and follow it with a voicemail drop. So right here for the voicemail, you might have a message. You upload an MP3 file, whatever you want to play. It's going to call the person, drop this voicemail in there, and that could be a part of your workflow as well. So this is kind of how you would just slowly build out a nurture sequence of when you want to communicate with people and so forth. Now, again, based upon your settings, you may only want this to operate during specific times, just to be respectful so people aren't getting emails and bugging them and voicemail drops at 10, 11 o'clock at night, depending upon how your workflow is set up. Notice if we're waiting 4 hours here, then waiting a day, who knows when the next time they're going to get it, depending upon when they entered, what time of day they entered the workflow is going to be whenever they get it. So again, setting that the date time restriction is a good way of limiting you for being able to sit back and annoy them, which, if they get a text message or voicemail drop at midnight, 10 o'clock at night, and you wake them up, they're not going to be very, happy about that. So they're going to be more prone to opt out. So you may want to just communicate with them within, not necessarily business hours, but just 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. or something like that, whatever their local time is, just to be respectful. So this right here is how you can build out a nurture sequence. And I'm going to save this. Not that we need it. So building that out can build out your complete nurture sequence, and that's how you would build out an email nurture sequence. Now, finally, what I want to just show you here, just a couple times real quick, I'm going to show you the recipes. Now, recipes are, Highlevel has been adding to these. If you click on Create Workflow and say Select Recipe, you will get this option right here. Now, rather than starting from scratch, which you can do with this option right here, you can import, let's just say you have an older campaign. Those aren't really supported anymore, but you can have what they call campaigns and triggers. If you have older ones, you can import that campaign, and that's a great way to convert it from a campaign, which again is no longer supported by Highlevel, into a workflow, which is what they want you to do. So that's great. But some of these other ones, if you take a look here, are pretty useful because Highlevel already has these workflows pre-built for you. So we'll just take a look at some of these here. Recipe, a missed call WhatsApp back. So if you sit back, if you miss a call from a lead, dealing with WhatsApp, you can use that recipe to come up with a workflow automation. What if you want to send product recommendations using GPT-4 Turbo? So that's ChatGPT. But some of the things, if you take a look here, are really good. This one, I want to show you this recipe for IVR. If you want to use the IVR system inside of your phone system, inside of Highlevel, I would definitely have to recommend choosing this. And I'm going to do this to show this to you. But before I do that, I want to just show you some of the other recipes that they have. Here's a recipe for Facebook comment automation. Again, that was a new feature that's relatively here for being able to reply back to Facebook comments. Email drip sequence. If you have appointment bookings, then this is a great one to sit back and do this. If you have an auto missed call text back, so if you're using the text back feature, or sorry, the auto missed call text back, you can use this recipe. If you have a no-show, if you're scheduling appointments over here and they're a no-show, you can use this recipe for no-show nurture to sit back and build sort of a nurture campaign to help get them re-engaged and to reapply for another appointment if they miss the one that they're at. So you see there's lots of different ones that they can do here, but one of the ones I really want to show you here, just to show you how it works, is to choose a recipe, and I'm going to use this IVR. So here, if we look at this, Highlevel builds this entire thing for you and at least gives you a framework to be able to build from, which I think is pretty cool. So notice here in the beginning, you have to have a trigger, and that trigger has to be a start IVR trigger. So nothing, you can't use any of the other IVR action items unless this trigger is started. So you could do this manually. You could build this workflow if you want to, or you can simply just use the one that Highlevel has and change it. So one of the things that you're going to see here is inside of this trigger, you're going to have to choose whatever phone number you want to have this triggered from. So again, I only have, I'm not sure why the no results are found for this one. I think I have a phone number on this one, but maybe not. Anyway, you can assign it to a particular phone number so that only the IVR will only react to people that call that particular phone number. And then you can do all these other things. You can listen to the welcome message. You can change that. You can change the message voice from man to woman, and you can go to town. So you can literally build your own phone system with this. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these here. You can sit back and take a look. I just really wanted to show you how choosing a recipe gives you this whole build out of this workflow, which could have probably take you maybe an hour. It might take you more, but you get all of it, and you get basically placeholders for press 1, press 2, and press 3. And all you have to do is come down here and change these action items of what you want to do. So this recipe is just a way to save time when you're wanting to create a workflow. So hopefully you can see the power of using this, but I do want to sit back specifically regarding the IVR. Once you publish this number here, okay, once you publish this workflow that has an IVR trigger, it will take control of your phone system. So I do want to warn you about that because I have a whole other video regarding phone systems and IVR and how to build this up, but people have implemented this, and you have to either want to do IVR or not want to do IVR. But if you have a workflow for this and you publish it, then this will sit back and dominate. All of the phone messages, the phone calls that you get will go into this workflow. There are no other options that you have. So if you already have forwarding, if you're using ring groups, if you're doing any of that other stuff, that will not work. The IVR will take control and be 100% responsible until you move it from publish back to draft. and then what other settings you have on your phone system will apply. So from the priority of how that works, please be careful about that. But that's just my experience of using the IVR system. So guys, I hope you found this class useful. I tried to give a more comprehensive overall workflows, how to troubleshoot them, how to dig into them, how to create your custom triggers, multiple action items. I hope you found it useful. If you found even a one nugget worth of information useful here, like this video, leave a comment here, because YouTube, I'm really trying to grow this channel. You would help me out a lot by just interacting with the video, because YouTube likes it. Share it if you know some other people that want to do this, then share it by all means. Thank you so much for watching. If you have not subscribed, click on the subscribe button. I appreciate your support, and have a great day.